I'm a friend of Santa Rita, as Peter's already explained, a consultant to help Santa Rita explore the terroirs, the many, many terroir possibilities in Chile. And that's really the motive that I'm there. It's such an exciting place to find such an array of different and new terroirs that it's compelling to go there and have a look. I want to describe the matrix because the matrix is very important to your understanding of the tasting. Because the matrix exists in two dimensions. Actually, the first slide was of the coast of Chile, just off Pumanque, and we're going to taste some wines from Pumanque, right near the Nylahue River, which goes out into the Pacific Ocean through the coastal range, and near the famous surfing beach of Pichilumu, which Sebastian is one of the guns on Pichilumu, so he might talk a little bit about that later. But the next photo is not of Chile, it's of Australia. That's where I should be right now instead of this miserable snowy town, but I'm here, as I say, on a labour of love. That's Tunkalilla Beach in South Australia. The next slide. And that's where I'd be if I was in Chile, slumming it in Casa Real while I do this onerous task of consulting. But let's get on to the matrix. The next one. Chilean wine future. We had a wonderful tasting of the Cabernets of Chile last night. And the traditional strength of Chile has been in Cabernet, 150 years history plus of making Cabernet grown on its own roots because of the lack of phylloxera, and the tasting demonstrated against good wines, even great wines from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, California and France and Italy, that Chilean Cabernet stands up on its own feet, is very unique and matches in quality those Cabernets from the rest of the world. But Cabernet is the old story, and to refine it is a very important part of Chile's future, but to find the new cool climate and the new terroirs for different varieties is really the mission of the future. You have in front of you a sheet, and it's a matrix sheet, basically, and I want you to use it throughout the tasting. And on the sheet, you can see the name of the regions that all of the wines that you're going to taste today come from. And you can see their latitude from north to south, 28 degrees at Huasco, down to 36 degrees at Trahuaco. Okay. You can see their distance from the ocean, so they're all coastal. The furthest from the ocean is 30 kilometres. The Andes, on average, are 90 kilometres from the ocean, to put this in perspective. The next column gives you the degree days, so you can see that they range, in fact, from about 1,000 degree days, which is very cool indeed, at Lower Barca, up to 1,600 degree days in Limery. Diurnal range, I'm just going to speak about that very briefly in a minute. Range from 11.3 at Lower Barca, again the very cool and very maritime place, 4 kilometres from the sea, range up to 16.5 again at Limery, and then the other figures are altitude and annual rainfall. But I think the first 4 columns are the columns you should concentrate on as you're tasting the wine. You'll get a feel for how cool, and therefore the influence of temperature on the, or how hot, influence of temperature on the wine. And the other is distance from the ocean and the diurnal range. The higher the diurnal range, the hotter the days. Let's go on to the next slide. This matrix I'm talking about is demonstrated by this. Here we're talking Maipo Alto, Pumanque, Lleida, San Antonio. Those various distances from the coast, 90, 30, 15, 0 kilometres from the coast. And this is just south of Santiago, so you're taking a transect across the 90 kilometres of the long, thin country from Maipo Alto to San Antonio. And you can see the amazing drop in heat that goes on as you go from the Andes and you get closer and closer to the Humboldt Current that we talked about in the Pacific Ocean. You go from 1600 plus degree days down to 1145, which is cooler than Burgundy. You also see a dramatic change in the diurnal range. At Maipo Alto, you have very hot days and you have very cold nights. So the range is very high, 17.6 degrees. And as you get to the coast, you have very cool days, but you have warm nights because the sea warms the air at night, and the differential day to night is only 10.6, and that has quite a profound effect on fruit physiology. Next one. So that's the horizontal part of the matrix. Then let's go to the vertical part. Limery, way up in the north, as we know, 30 degrees north, warm, and this is a different part of, this is actually at Oval, so it's a slightly different figure, but it's a figure accurate for one particular vineyard. 1700 degree days, even though it's close to the coast. Diurnal range, because it is close to the coast, is still quite low. Then we go down to San Antonio, which is halfway down the sort of wine-producing areas of Chile in the vertical sense. 1145 down to Temuco, right down the bottom, which is 900, getting down towards Patagonia. But all of them have low diurnal because they're all close to the coast. So you have this two-way matrix. And in that matrix, you also have soil differences. You have the Andes on one side, big granitic mountains, and you have all of the alluvium and the colluvium that collects at the foot of those in the Central Valley. And on the coast, you have the coastal range, which our geological short film showed as being scraped off the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, so it's sediments. So you can go from the sediments, marine sediments of the coast, through to the granitic material in the Andes, and that matrix coexists with that climate matrix. You can really, in Chile, dial up any combination of soil, sedimentary, alluvial, colluvial, granite, sandstone, shale, schist, whatever, and combine it with a temperature regime to suit your purpose. So it's an exciting matrix. And keep that in front of you as we go through. The next slide, just in a day's work. This is the old-fashioned vineyard and the Cabernet vineyard in the middle of the valley, in the hot and alluvial circumstance. The next one, we go to cool later in the coastal range, where you have the sedimentary soils, quite a different set of soils to the alluvium that comes out of the Andes Mountains, the coastal range. The next one. We have lots of strategy meetings talking about which vineyards we're going to, which areas we're going to visit next, and which vineyards we're going to plant next. And they're always very serious meetings. The last slide, I think, is almost the last slide. Effective diurnal range. I just want to say to you that degree day isn't everything. It doesn't tell you everything about the heat in the day. I've compared Burgundy to San Antonio, the very cool area on the coast parallel to Santiago, to Casablanca. And I want to highlight the difference between San Antonio, which is a proxy for Lleida, if you like, and Casablanca. They're not that far away apart in degree day summation, 100 degrees, 1145 versus 1245. Diurnal range is enormously different. At San Antonio, very maritime, the air off the ocean, cool days, warm nights. Whereas Casablanca, much colder air coming out of the hills and much hotter in the day, and therefore a big diurnal of 17.2. Then the next two columns give you what happens to the day temperatures and the night temperatures because of that diurnal effect. And if you run through all the mathematics and do the equations, in Burgundy, the day temperature averages 21.2, which is not far different from San Antonio at 20.7. And then you get a massive lift of 4 degrees at almost the same degree day summation at 1245 in Casablanca because of this large diurnal range. You also get a massive drop in night temperatures from approximately 10 in the other two places down to 7 in Casablanca. And that has profound effects on the physiology of the vine, because the vine works at around 10 plus. It stops working once the temperatures drop significantly below 10. So in both Burgundy and San Antonio, the vine is still ticking over at night, but in Casablanca, it stops at night. And that means that it takes much longer to ripen grapes in Casablanca, and you end up with a different flavor profile and a different acid profile and a different phenol profile in grapes out of Casablanca to grapes from San Antonio, or for that matter, Burgundy. Next slide. You're going to taste some wine from Pumanque, a coastal region. It's on your sheet. 30 kilometres from second last, 30 kilometres from the ocean, 1,500 degree days, a wonderful place for growing the Cabernet family, and we've now had 4 vintages out of Pumanque, and the promise is really exciting. And some wines, you're going to see some wines in the tasting today, and there's some others outside, and you should have a look at those. Diurnal range is moderate. It's not up in the 16 and 17 degree, it's 14 degrees. And the soils are just fabulous. As Peter said, they're edible, and I'll show you some. That's the clay underneath. The next one. That's the Pumanque dirt. It's just beautiful red, sandy loam, and just perfect for growing the Cabernet varieties in this very gentle climate. Very different to the traditional valleys. We are exploring one last region of Chile as a cool climate area. Before we do, just to compare Pumanque to Bordeaux, Coonawarra, and the traditional area up in Maipo, you can see that Pumanque is very similar to Coonawarra, in fact, in terms of heat summation and in terms of diurnal range, and a lot lower diurnal range and a lot cooler than the traditional areas in Chile. Next one. And this is the last area. We've just identified a new spot in southern Chile where we think we're just about to plant a vineyard, and we don't have to fertilise it at all. With that, we're going over to the tasting, but I hope you do use the matrix you have in front of you to think about the consequences of degree day summation and the consequences of diurnal range in the wines you're tasting, because it does have, both factors have profound consequences. Thank you.